What's going on, guys, and welcome to my AEW Collision audio review for September 23rd, 2023. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. Really enjoyed Collision on Saturday, honestly, between the opening match, the closing match, and some of the stuff we got in between. I thought it was the strongest show that Collision has had since CM Punk got fired at the beginning of the month. We had a really good TNT title match to kick off the show, a great Texas Death match to close out the show, a really good Jay White, Andrade El Idolo match in the middle, an RVD appearance in his home state, a bunch of other good stuff. Actually, a really good AEW World Tag Team title match as well, and a slew of matches announced for WrestleDream coming up next weekend. I'm probably going to forget, so I might as well mention it now. We had, some promos and stuff and recapping what happened at Grand Slam, like with, Ortiz confronting Santana after what happened on Rampage on Friday night. Comments from Eddie Kingston regarding his Ring of Honor World title match, stuff like that. But we did find out Eddie Kingston will be defending both the Ring of Honor World Championship and the strong New Japan Openweight title against Katsuyori Shibata, the current Ring of Honor Pure Champion, coming up at Wrestle Kingdom a week from today at WrestleDream, and at their next pay-per-view. So it will not be winner take all. Katsuyori Shibata's belt will not be on the line. So it's pretty obvious Eddie Kingston is winning. But that should be a great match, though, Shibata and Eddie Kingston, for both the Ring of Honor World title and the Strong Openweight Championship as well. They had that announced. We found out on Rampage when Jericho saved Omega, they were challenging the Don Callis family to a six-man tag team match. Omega, Jericho, and Ibushi versus Sammy Guevara and Konosuke Takeshita. And their partner, we found out here, Will Ospreay, which makes a lot of sense given the history he has with Jericho, Ibushi, Omega. So I really like that fit, actually. Ospreay, Guevara, and Takeshita versus Jericho, Omega, and Ibushi. That sounds awesome. That sounds like an awesome six-man tag team match for that pay-per-view coming up in a week from now. We had those two matches announced. We had a TBS Championship match announced. A lot of matches announced for WrestleDream coming up next weekend. The TBS one I'll talk about a little bit later on. But it's shaping up to be a great show, a really, really fun show. We open up this show with, like I said, the TNT Championship on the line. Darby Allin contending for the gold in what was basically a handicap match against the actual current champion, Luchasaurus, and Christian Cage. This was less of a handicap match, and it really did feel like a triple threat at certain points. It wasn't just Jericho and Luchasaurus teaming up on Darby, and it was a 2-on-1 handicap without any tag rules. No, this was like a true triple threat. Not in the sense that Christian and Luchasaurus were fighting each other, but that it was always interesting. It was never boring. Darby always excels in the underdog role, so him having overcome the odds and take out Christian and Luchasaurus at the same time, he split his time between both men. It turned into a really, really good triple threat. This was a blast. I thought this was great. And it came to a certain point where for the first time since Christian and Luchasaurus joined forces about a year ago, we finally saw some tension teased between the two, especially for the first time since Luchasaurus became the TNT champion, actually, and not Christian, back in June. Because Christian is not the TNT champion. He is now after pinning Luchasaurus, but it wasn't like a finger poke of doom type of thing Luchasaurus laid down for him. He would not have taken the loss so easily to Christian. Christian almost pinned Darby at one point when Luchasaurus was on the outside. Lucha shot him and looked like, "What are you doing?" And Christian was like, "I'm just wearing him down," which is what I think Nigel McGuinness said on commentary, which I thought was funny. They had a really, really good match, but in the end, it was Christian emerging victorious after Darby hit the coffin drop on Luchasaurus. Christian chucked Darby to ringside, and Christian pinned Luchasaurus to become the new TNT champion. So finally, he is the true TNT champion. Luchasaurus is not happy. He did celebrate with Christian afterward, but only because Christian ordered him to. He ordered him to put him on his shoulders and walk him around and celebrate, whatever. Luchasaurus didn't turn on him here. That might be coming on the sooner side. They may never get to that. They might tease it, but not actually deliver it. It would make for a great reaction, not that Luchasaurus is going to be this breakout babyface. I actually like Luchasaurus in his current role more as like a Kane-esque heel for AEW. But they're teasing that, and we might see that come WrestleDream. Because we had another match announced for that pay-per-view as well. A little bit later on in the show, we found out Christian Cage, as you would expect, he has to. In Seattle, Darby Allin has to go for the championship. So I was worried we might get like a four-way involving Nick Wayne, who hasn't done jack shit to earn a title shot. I've liked his role in the feud and whatnot, being Darby's friend and partner or sidekick, whatever. He should not be in that match. He'll probably end up in a pre-show match on that show. He's from the area. That would be a cool moment for him. There is no reason to have Nick Wayne, who I don't think has won a single meaningful television match so far in AEW, on his own specifically, contending for the TNT title, regardless of where the pay-per-view is emanating from. So he might be at ringside. Sting might be at ringside, I doubt it. But what the match will be Christian Cage defending against Darby Allin, which sounds awesome on its own, in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And it's a tough one to call because you would think Darby, after all this time, failing here, failing it all out, would get the belt back in Seattle, no less, the same building where he won the belt back from Samoa Joe for the second time. Or the third time, maybe? I don't remember. Back in January. Then he lost it a month later, like mere weeks later, back to Samoa Joe. But they had a great match, and Darby won. It was a great reaction. We might see the same sight at WrestleDream next weekend. Now, I would not do that. I would not put the belt on Christian for a mere week and then drop it right back to Darby, who has really done all that he can do as the TNT champion personally. I really have no desire to see that myself. But a 2 out of 3 falls match makes a lot of sense, though. Darby pinned him in that tag team match at Grand Slam. He beat Christian in a singles match about a month ago on Collision. So I like that a lot, and that match should be great. We had a tag team match, very random on paper, but I'll make sense of it in a second. Rob Van Dam wrestling his second match for AEW, teaming up with the FTW champion Hook against Daddy Magic Matt Menard and Cool Hand Angelo Parker. Such a dumb name, but they've had it for so long that it is what it is. So, yeah, a very random match here, but the reason they did it, probably to sell more tickets, because the ticket sales for the show were not great, so they announced hometown hero RVD. They weren't in Battle Creek, Michigan, but he is from Michigan. That's where the show emanated from, so they brought in RVD. And he teamed, at least once anyway, according to the commentators, with Taz on ECW over 20 years ago. So that was the connection there with Hook and why it wasn't a singles match. The match had no storyline significance. I doubt it leads anywhere. It didn't really matter, though. The crowd did not care. I didn't really care. I thought this was a fun match. I'd rather they find something meaningful for Hook to do. They did with the Jack Perry program. Even if Jack was around right now, they wouldn't be feuding still, I think. I think that was always supposed to end it all in when Hook beat Perry to get the belt back. The whole FTW title thing is dumb to me. Hook should kind of move up the card at this point. But still, I thought this was a fun little attraction match. RVD looked good, picked up the win for his team. The crowd was into him. So I thought this was fun. I enjoyed it for what it was. We had Julia Hart one-on-one with Kiera Hogan. We saw Julia Hart on the Grand Slam Rampage on Friday night beating Sky Blue. She beat Kiera Hogan here as well. Sky Blue made the save for Hogan afterward, but Hart also laid her out. And then she and Brody King. We have not seen Malachi Black since All In, I think. By the way, we've seen Brody King with Julia Hart. We have not seen Buddy Matthews or Malachi Black. I don't know if that's intentional or if Tony Khan just has nothing for them right now. If I'm fucking Tony Khan, I'm not fucking Tony Khan. That would be weird. If I am Tony Khan, I am putting Malachi Black back on the show as a single star. There's no reason to keep doing the trio stuff. They were a great trio. Start using Black on his own on this show, please. Specifically on Collision. I don't know if he gets any real meaningful push on Dynamite or Rampage is a lost cause. Put him on Collision and start giving him a singles push. Buddy Matthews, too. He's also great, but I like Brody King a lot. Him being like the heavy for Julia Hart for right now is fine. What we found out from them after this match was the fact that come WrestleDream next weekend, it's going to be Hart challenging Kris Statlander for the AEW TBS title. And Brody King had mentioned the last loss, making it sound like the last loss that Julia Hart had was to Kris Statlander. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So I looked it up, and it was the last loss that Julia Hart had was to Kris Statlander. I figured it was a couple of months ago when Kris Statlander first came back, and she defended the championship on a weekly basis, and she kind of is now as well. I figured, okay, they did that match when she first came back. No, they didn't. They have not done that match this year. The last time they faced off when Kris Statlander beat Julia Hart was on an episode of fucking Dark, which has not been around in months, but we're going back to like April of 2022. They did the match on Dark, and Statlander beat her. That was literally the last time that Julia Hart lost the match. She has been undefeated for almost a year and a half, and you would never fucking know. Julia Hart is not bad. She's fine in the ring. The character work has helped her a lot. It's much better than being a fucking cheerleader, but at the same time, she's not amazing in the ring. Her matches aren't really overly long. Like, she had that program with Anna Jay a number of months ago, and she beat her, but it didn't really amount to anything. Maybe she got hurt, I don't know. But she's had all of, 3 TV matches this year, so it's hard to care. It's hard to care or feel like she's the threat to that title come WrestleDream next weekend. So I applaud the fact they're going back to her and Statlander, referencing that. It makes sense from a storyline standpoint. But it's not like I'm thinking, oh, Julia Hart's been on such a tear the past year and a half. No, she's never even really been in the ring on TV. She's merely been managing the House of Black, which is okay. But I also can't take her seriously as a pay-per-view opponent for Kris Statlander. It's a fine match, and I'm glad Statlander's on the show. I don't think she's defended... No, she defended the TBS title at All Out. She beat Ruby Soho. But still, I mean, it just doesn't really feel like that's a pay-per-view match. But hopefully they keep it short and sweet and Statlander wins decisively. For the first time ever, I think, we had Jay White versus Andrade El Idolo one-on-one. Really good match here. The crowd wasn't too into it. I don't know if they were just paying attention to the action or whatever, but I thought this was a really good match. The crowd wasn't as hot for this as they were for other stuff on the show. Jay White going over following interference from Bullet Club Gold. The right outcome there, I mean, both guys could use the win. It doesn't really matter. Andrade, I don't know when the last time he lost was. He hasn't had a lot of matches since coming back a couple of months ago, but I don't think he's lost at all in that time. Jay White has not lost, I don't think, a single singles match in the time that he's been in AEW. And if he did, it might have been by DQ. So keeping him strong to me is the higher priority. And what I think coming out of this, if Andrade needs backup, bring on in La Facion and Gobernable. They've been MIA for weeks now. They were doing the vignettes for them a number of weeks ago with them going through initiation or some shit in Mexico. But we haven't seen those in a while, unless I've just missed them. So I think they're bringing on back Roosh, Preston Vance, and Dralistico. And that might be the next big 8-man tag team match. La Facion and Gobernable versus Bullet Club Gold. The AEW World Tag Team titles on the line. FTR taking on the Workhorsemen as part of the FTR Open Challenge. Really fun match here. I mean, no one thought for a single fucking second that the Workhorsemen were taking the belts. Because FTR and Aussie Open was already announced for WrestleDream next weekend, which I'll get to in a second. But the Workhorsemen, to their credit, they always have really good performances on Rampage and sometimes on Dynamite, primarily on Ring of Honor TV. They have some really fun, hard-hitting matches. The problem is that they never fucking win. They always lose. Even on Ring of Honor TV, they always lose. So the outcome was never in doubt. But I thought they went in here and had a really impressive outing. Specifically JD Drake, when he hit that swanton on, might have been Dax, and he pinned him, the crowd legitimately thought that they may have had the match won. And he got a "This is awesome" chant, or "Holy shit," I think it was, which I thought was cool. And they're a really good tag team. They just need to build them up more is the problem. They probably won't after this. We'll probably have this match, and we'll never see them again on the show. But for a 4 or 5 minute sprint, it was really fun. FTR going over in the end, winning with the sharpshooter, and then Aussie Open, who were on commentary, enter the ring, and they have a back and forth with FTR. I thought this was also really, really well done. Aussie Open already challenged them a week ago, so the match was already set in stone for the pay-per-view. But what this did was get people more excited for the match, add some backstory, remind people that they had a match in a New Japan event exactly 1 year ago to the day of WrestleDream. On Saturday, October 1st, 2022, they had their match. FTR won, retained the New Japan Tag Team titles against Aussie Open, and earned their respect. And Aussie Open even brought up here that they haven't lived up to the hype. They've had some matches since then. I think Mark Davis got hurt. They left New Japan. They came to AEW. They've had a lot of fun matches, but no real show-stealing matches yet. And they want to prove that they are one of the best tag teams in the world by taking it to FTR and even taking those tag team titles. And FTR even brought up, oh, you were sacrificial lambs for Max and his friend, for Jericho and his friend. And I'm thinking, I'm glad they kind of brought that up, but at the same time, I'm like, do you really want to I kind of even forgot about that they lost those matches. Specifically the Jericho one, which makes even less sense in retrospect, that Aussie Open lost to fucking Jericho and Guevara a week before Jericho and Guevara split up anyway. I mean, how pointless is that? That was so fucking dumb. I mean, they literally split up, and Aussie Open are the ones getting the tag team title shot. So stupid. But I'm looking forward to that match, though. I really like the post-match back and forth to kind of set it up. And then we were at the main event, Bryan Danielson and Ricky Stark's Texas Death Match here. This probably would have happened at WrestleDream if we weren't getting Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr., which might be the main event. They're kind of building it up as the main event. It's a dream match. We're not getting enough for the second straight pay-per-view, and we are not getting an AEW World Title defense, because instead it's going to be Cole and MJF versus The Righteous, as we found out on Friday's Rampage, for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. So, again, no AEW World title defense in that show. We just had one on Wednesday, but still. Another pay-per-view without a title defense is kind of ridiculous. But the card itself sells itself, so whatever. So, my point is, Danielson and Sabre might be the main event for that show. Danielson winning here was not overly shocking, if you want him to be looking strong going into that matchup. But this was great stuff, though. Another brutal battle, another brutal, bloody battle between these two. Starks, again, looking great in defeat. Took a lot to put him down, having a great outing in his own right. I think I definitely enjoyed the strap match more, because this was hurt by the commercial breaks. They didn't have that much time. It was about a 20-minute match, but with 2 commercial breaks. So that kind of hurt the flow a little bit. There was no interference, even though this was unless I missed something where they said they were banning like Big Cass or Big Bill or whatever and Blackpool Combat Club from ringside, there was no interference, which I appreciated. I think that would have watered down the match, although it just didn't make sense because if you have no disqualifications, why wouldn't they interfere? But anyway, really good match here. Danielson goes over, heading into the Zack Sabre Jr. match next weekend. So overall, like I said, a really good Collision, one of the best Collisions in well over a month. Definitely the best Collision show since Punk left. And Collision success wasn't Punk wasn't completely responsible for the success of the show. It can't all be attributed to him. But I feel like did play a factor in keeping some people off the show, which, I'm not saying Collision is great just because there's no Elite, but I feel like Dynamite is the Elite show. Keep them on that shit or on Rampage or whatever. They don't have to be on Collision. Keep Collision for the guys like Andrade and Miro and Hobbs and people like that. Jay White, Ricky Starks, Danielson. And that was kind of the show that we got this week. We did have a Miro and Lana, a.k.a. CJ Perry. That's the name that she's using now, her real name. We did have an interaction between them backstage. It sounds like Lana will not be wrestling, but she will be managing other clients, is what she said. So, I don't really care for Lana personally, but if they want to use her to manage other people, fine. I feel like AEW already has enough managers, but it's not that big of a deal. As long as she's not wrestling, that's all I'm content with. But anyway, a really good addition to Dynamite, or rather, Dynamite was very good on Wednesday as well, but Collision this week, no Grand Slam theme, just a straightforward show, and it delivered. We'll try to do a Collision review next week before Wrestle Kingdom, or rather WrestleDream, that night on Sunday, October 1st. Same thing with All Out. I'll try to watch it, review it, put it up before that pay-per-view on Sunday night, so keep an eye out for that. Have an awesome one, guys. Thank you so much for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.